The Dungeon World. Chapter 1, The Cataclysm. The sun beat down on Maya's face as she led the group of hikers along the mist trail. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the roar of Yosemite Falls. It was a perfect day in the park, the kind that made her heart swell with pride for the land she protected. "Hey, Maya," a voice called out from behind her. "What's that up ahead?" Maya turned to see young Alex, his face pale and his eyes wide with alarm. She followed his gaze to a sight that made her blood run cold. The familiar granite cliffs of Half Dome were distorting, twisting into grotesque shapes. The trees around them groaned and creaked as if in agony, their branches elongating and intertwining to form a dense canopy that blocked out the sun. "Everyone, stay close," Maya yelled, her voice sharp with urgency. "Something's happening!" The ground beneath their feet trembled, and a deep rumbling echoed through the valley. The once familiar trail transformed into a treacherous maze of shifting rocks and gaping fissures. Panic erupted among the hikers, their voices rising in a chorus of fear and confusion. Maya drew her radio, attempting to contact the ranger station, but all she heard was static. "The comms are down," she said, her voice grim. "We're on our own." As they stumbled through the twisting terrain, the hikers encountered strange and terrifying creatures. Giant spiders with glowing eyes scuttled from the shadows, their venomous fangs dripping with a viscous liquid. Winged serpents soared through the air, their piercing screeches echoing through the canyon. Maya led the group with a calm determination, using her knowledge of the wilderness to find safe passage. She taught them how to identify edible plants, how to purify water, and how to build makeshift shelters. Days turned into weeks, and the hikers became survivors. They learned to adapt to the harsh new reality, their bond forged in the crucible of adversity. One evening, as they huddled around a campfire, a lone figure stumbled into their clearing. It was Kai, a young man with wild eyes and tattered clothing. He spoke of cities transformed into monstrous structures, of mutated creatures roaming the land, of a world gone mad. Maya listened intently, her mind racing. She knew that they couldn't stay in the wilderness forever. They needed to find other survivors, to rebuild what had been lost. "We have to go," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "We have to find out what happened to the world and what we can do to fix it." The other survivors nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with a newfound determination. Together they set off into the unknown, guided by Maya's unwavering spirit, in the hope that they could find a way to survive in this dungeon world. Chapter 2. Banding Together. The remnants of San Francisco were a twisted mockery of the city Maya once knew. Buildings leaned at impossible angles, their steel skeletons exposed like the ribs of a decaying beast. The Golden Gate Bridge, now a warped tangle of metal, stretched towards a horizon shrouded in perpetual twilight. Maya's small band of survivors stumbled through the rubble-strewn streets, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and terror. They had encountered other groups along the way, some hostile, some desperate. But Maya, with her quiet strength and unwavering resolve, had managed to forge alliances, uniting them under a common goal: survival. They found refuge in the skeletal remains of the Transamerica Pyramid, its tilted spire piercing the smog-filled sky like a defiant finger. The building's interior had been transformed, its once pristine offices now a labyrinth of overgrown vegetation and shattered glass. "This will be our home," Maya announced, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. "We'll make it safe. We'll make it strong." The survivors set to work, clearing debris, reinforcing walls, and establishing a perimeter. They scavenged for food and water, venturing into the surrounding ruins in search of supplies. Each day was a struggle, a constant battle against the elements and the ever-present threat of mutated creatures. One afternoon, as Maya was scouting the perimeter, she noticed a figure huddled in the shadows of a nearby alleyway. It was a young man, his clothes tattered and his eyes filled with a haunted look. "Who are you?" Maya asked, her hand resting on the hilt of her knife. The man hesitated, then stepped into the light. "My name is Kai," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. I'm alone." Maya studied him for a moment, sensing a flicker of intelligence beneath the surface of his fear. "What can you do?" she asked. Kai's eyes flickered with a spark of defiance. "I'm a hacker," he said. "I can find information, bypass security systems, make things work. Maya nodded slowly. We can use someone like you, she said. Come with us. Kai followed Maya back to the pyramid, his eyes wide with wonder as he took in the makeshift community. He quickly proved his worth, repairing damaged equipment, setting up a rudimentary communication system, and even devising traps to ward off the mutated creatures. But Kai's most valuable contribution came when he stumbled upon a series of strange symbols etched into the walls of the dungeon. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, a complex pattern of lines and curves that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. What are these? He asked Maya, his voice filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Maya examined the symbols, her brow furrowed in concentration. I don't know, she admitted, but I have a feeling they're important. Kai nodded, his eyes already scanning the symbols with a focused intensity. I'll figure them out, he said. I'll find out what they mean. And as Kai delved deeper into the mystery of the dungeon's symbols, the Pathfinders began to realize that their struggle for survival was just the beginning of a much larger adventure. Chapter 3. The Convergence. I've got something! Kai's voice echoed through this makeshift tech lab he'd set up in one of the pyramid's lower levels. Maya, along with a few other Pathfinders, hurried down the winding, vine-covered staircase. What is it, Kai? Maya asked, her brow furrowed with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Kai gestured towards a glowing panel on his jury-rigged console. I've been tracking energy fluctuations throughout the building, and they all seem to converge on this one spot. The group followed Kai's lead, pushing aside a curtain of overgrown vines to reveal a hidden door. It was made of a strange, metallic substance that seemed to hum with a faint energy. How did we miss this? Anya, the guild's medic, whispered, her eyes wide with surprise. It wasn't there before, Kai replied, his voice hushed with awe. I think the dungeon, it's changing. Maya exchanged a knowing look with Marcus, the battle-hardened ex-soldier. They had both sensed the dungeon's unpredictable nature, its ability to shift and transform at will. With a deep breath, Maya reached for the door handle. It was cold to the touch, and a strange tingling sensation ran up her arm as she turned it. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit chamber. The Pathfinders cautiously entered, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The room was bare except for a pedestal in the center, upon which rested a strange, spherical device. It pulsated with a soft, ethereal light. What is that? Sarah, the youngest member of the guild, whispered, her eyes fixed on the device. Kai approached the pedestal, his fingers twitching with a hacker's instinct. It's some kind of communication device, he said, but I've never seen anything like it. He reached out to touch the device, and it sprang to life, bathing the room in a brilliant white light. The Pathfinders shielded their eyes, but Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. A voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language they didn't understand, yet somehow they understood its meaning. Greetings, inhabitants of the dungeon world. We are the Convergence, an alliance of advanced civilizations from across the galaxy. The voice paused as if gauging their reaction. Maya could feel the tension in the room, the mix of fear, wonder, and disbelief. Your world has been transformed into a proving ground, the voice continued, a test of your species' potential. You have been chosen to face a series of trials designed to evaluate your resilience, your ingenuity, and your capacity for growth. The Pathfinders exchanged bewildered glances. They were just ordinary people, survivors of a global catastrophe. Why had they been chosen for this? If you succeed, the voice boomed, you will prove your worthiness to join our ranks. You will transcend your planetary limitations and become part of a greater whole. But if we fail, Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Then your species will perish, the voice replied, its tone cold and unforgiving. The choice is yours. The light faded and the device fell silent. The Pathfinders were left standing in the darkness, their minds reeling with the implications of what they had just heard. Maya looked at her companions, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew that they faced an impossible task, but she also knew that they couldn't give up. We have to do this, she said, her voice ringing with a newfound resolve. We have to prove that humanity is worthy of a future. The Pathfinders nodded in agreement, their eyes burning with a shared purpose. They had been given a chance to save their world, a chance to become something more. They would not fail. Chapter 4. Trials and Tribulations. The first challenge came in the form of a chasm, a gaping maw in the earth that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. "How do we cross this?" Anya whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Maya surveyed the scene, her eyes scanning the cliff face for any sign of a path. "We'll find a way," she said, her voice firm. "We always do." Kai, ever resourceful, had rigged up a makeshift grappling hook using scavenged materials. He tested it on a smaller crevice, and it held. "This might work," he said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "But we'll need to be careful. One wrong move, and it's a long way down." One by one, the Pathfinders made their way across the chasm, their hearts pounding in their chests as they swung over the abyss. It was a test of their courage and trust in one another, and they passed it with flying colors. The next challenge was a labyrinthine maze of twisting tunnels and hidden passages. The air grew heavy and oppressive, filled with the stench of decay and the distant sound of dripping water. "I feel like we're being watched," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Maya nodded, her senses on high alert. "Stay close," she said, "and keep your eyes peeled." The maze was a test of their patience and their ability to work together. They encountered traps, dead ends, and even a few monstrous creatures lurking in the shadows. But they persevered, their determination fueled by the knowledge that their survival depended on it. The final challenge of the day was a towering wall of thorns, its razor-sharp barbs glistening with a venomous dew. "Looks like we're going to have to get creative," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the wall for a weakness. Maya spotted a narrow opening, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "This could be our way in," she said. But the thorns were dense and unforgiving, tearing at their clothes and skin as they pushed through. It was a test of their resilience and their willingness to endure pain for the sake of progress. As they emerged on the other side, battered and bleeding, Maya felt a surge of pride. They had faced 3 challenges in a single day, and they had overcome them all. "We're getting stronger," she said, her voice filled with a quiet confidence. "We're learning to adapt to this world." The Pathfinders gathered around her, their faces etched with exhaustion, but their spirits unbroken. They knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but they were ready for it. "We'll get through this," Kai said, his voice filled with determination. "Together." Maya nodded, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Together," she echoed. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the twisted landscape. As the Pathfinders settled down for the night, they knew that they were one step closer to proving their worthiness, one step closer to unlocking the secrets of the dungeon world. Chapter 5: The Crucible of Humanity. A bone-chilling silence hung in the air as the Pathfinders entered the heart of the dungeon. The air was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. The only sound was the echo of their own ragged breaths. Before them stood a colossal figure, a monstrous amalgam of twisted limbs, gnashing teeth and glowing eyes. It towered over them, its presence radiating a palpable wave of dread. "What is that thing?" Sarah whimpered, clutching Anya's arm. "It's the Guardian," Maya said, her voice barely a whisper. "The final challenge." The creature let out a deafening roar, its voice a cacophony of screams and whispers. The ground shook and the walls of the chamber trembled. "It's feeding on our fear," Kai said, his voice strained. "We have to fight back." But fear had already taken root in their hearts. The Guardian's presence seemed to amplify their deepest insecurities, their darkest doubts. Marcus, the battle-hardened soldier, saw visions of his fallen comrades, their faces twisted in agony. Sarah, the youngest member of the group, relived the trauma of losing her family in the cataclysm. Even Maya, the stoic leader, felt a wave of doubt wash over her, questioning her ability to guide them through this final ordeal. The Guardian lunged, its claws raking through the air. The Pathfinders scattered, barely dodging the attack. But the creature was relentless, its movements swift and unpredictable. "We can't fight it head-on," Maya yelled over the din. "We have to find its weakness." But the Guardian seemed to have none. It was a force of pure chaos, fueled by their own fears and insecurities. As the battle raged, Maya watched her companions falter. Their movements grew sluggish, their attacks hesitant. They were losing hope, succumbing to the darkness that the Guardian embodied. "No!" Maya cried out, her voice filled with a desperate fury. "We won't let it win! We won't let it break us!" She charged towards the Guardian, her sword raised high, but the creature swatted her aside like a fly, sending her crashing into the wall. As Maya lay there, stunned and bruised, she saw a vision of her own. It was a younger version of herself, standing on the edge of a cliff, her eyes filled with fear. "Don't be afraid," a voice whispered in her ear. It was the voice of her father, a man she had lost long ago. "You are stronger than you know." Maya closed her eyes, drawing strength from the memory of her father's love and encouragement. She opened her eyes, a newfound determination burning in their depths. "Get up!" she shouted to her companions. "We can't give up! We have to fight!" Her words seemed to ignite a spark in the others. Marcus, his face set in a grim mask, rallied the group, his voice booming through the chamber. "She's right," he yelled. "We're Pathfinders. We don't back down from a challenge." The Pathfinders rose to their feet, their eyes filled with a renewed determination. They had faced countless trials, overcome insurmountable odds. They would not be defeated by a creature of fear and doubt. They charged forward as one, their weapons flashing, their voices raised in a battle cry that echoed through the depths of the dungeon. The Guardian roared in defiance, but its attacks were no longer as potent. The Pathfinders had found their strength, their unity, their unwavering belief in themselves and each other. And in that moment, they knew they would prevail. Chapter 6, A New Dawn. Maya watched as the Guardian's form wavered, its monstrous limbs dissolving into shimmering motes of light. The creature's roar became a mournful wail, a final cry of defiance against the rising tide of hope. The air crackled with energy, a surge of power that pulsed through the Pathfinders. They stood their ground, their weapons lowered but their spirits unbowed. "It's over," Maya whispered, her voice filled with awe and exhaustion. The crystalline structure at the center of the chamber began to glow, its light spreading outward like a ripple in a pond. The walls of the dungeon trembled, and the ground beneath their feet shook. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The dungeon is changing," Kai said, his eyes fixed on the glowing structure. "It's reverting." The Pathfinders watched in amazement as the monstrous architecture of the dungeon dissolved, revealing the familiar contours of the Transamerica Pyramid. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the once darkened chamber. "We did it," Marcus said, a rare smile spreading across his weathered face. "We actually did it." Anya let out a sob of relief, collapsing into Sarah's arms. "We're going home," she whispered. But Maya's gaze remained fixed on the crystalline structure, which was now shrinking, its light fading. "It's not over yet," she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "We have to see this through." The Pathfinders followed Maya as she approached the structure. It was now the size of a basketball, its light a mere flicker. "Thank you," Maya whispered, her hand hovering over the glowing orb. "Thank you for showing us our strength." The orb pulsed one last time, then winked out of existence. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the gentle dripping of water from a nearby pipe. The Pathfinders made their way out of the pyramid, emerging into the familiar streets of San Francisco. But something was different. The buildings were no longer twisted and grotesque. The air was clear and fresh, and the sun shone down from a cloudless sky. A cheer erupted from the crowd of survivors who had gathered outside. They had been watching the transformation from afar, their hearts filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Maya looked out at the sea of faces, her eyes filled with tears. "We did it," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "We saved our world." The crowd surged forward, embracing the Pathfinders in a wave of gratitude and joy. Maya found herself enveloped in a group hug, the warmth of human contact washing over her. As she looked out at the city, bathed in the golden light of the rising sun, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since the cataclysm. The trials they had faced had been difficult, but they had also brought them together, forging a bond of unity and resilience. The dungeon world had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but it had also shown them their true potential. They had emerged from the ordeal stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. A new dawn had broken for humanity, a dawn filled with hope and the promise of a brighter future. And Maya knew that, together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.